and I want to bring up another thing that I wanted Dan maybe to weigh in on. The website, and I don't know the Ukrainian word. It's the Ukrainian word for a peacekeeper, Microvitz or whatever it is.
Mirotvorets. It's Russian as well.
Okay. Mirovitz, yeah. It means peacekeeper, ironically, but it's a kill site. And I've interviewed about 4 people that are on the kill site. I was told recently, I guess I got added to it, so whatever. But it's a kill site where they dox people, they put their photos where they're located, and they even have children, over 300 children. And I had Faina on my show along with Mira Tordara. We talked about her experience in the US and also being on the kill list. Wyatt Reed, an American journalist who was almost killed. His hotel was bombed. He was a minute away. Ava Bartlett as well, and some others. But the US is doing nothing to shut it down, even though the State Department had called it a terrorist website 5 years ago. It's now being run. They brag about it being run by Langley, which is Langley, Virginia. For those who may not know in the audience, that's the head of the CIA. So in other words, it's implying that the intelligence community of British and American are in collusion with this kill site. So when Daria Dugina was murdered in Moscow, they put liquidated across her picture, and there's been 12 journalists that have been killed. So Dmitry, first of all, I want to go to you and then to you, Dan. What, if any, reaction has there been from your colleagues about this horrendous kill site that even has children in it?
Well, we repeatedly have been drawing attention to this site and we were writing to Secretary General about this. We were trying to deal with UNICEF on this, and UNICEF was also, which is supposed to be a kind of defender of the rights of the children throughout the globe. UNICEF was very tepid towards this situation. They were trying to ignore it until recently, when we had this pronounced during Security Council meeting directly, and then one of our correspondents addressed direct question to UNICEF. What do they think about 327 minors having personal data displayed at this kill site? And then UNICEF said that, well, we do not approve this kind of thing. We call for Ukrainian government to delete this information about minors. But you're absolutely right. It's not clear who runs this site. At the beginning, it was linked to the Ministry of Interior of Ukraine. Mr. Gerashchenko was kind of a father of this site. Then when they realized that there is a global outcry towards this site, then they changed the affiliation. Now it is being positioned as kind of a neutral site, non-political, but of course everybody understands who runs it. And it can't be done without complicity, without collusion from Western countries and from the United States first and foremost. That's quite clear for everybody. Otherwise, of course, this site would have been blocked already for a long time. But it continues to function. It continues to really threaten people's lives. And Daria Dugina, unfortunately, is not the only person liquidated from this site. There were a lot of others. Especially at the beginning when it was started. And it's not only about threat of assassination, it's also about bullying, and it's about threats. And Faina, that you mentioned, for a 14-year-old girl from Lugansk, also has personal data there. And I can imagine somebody knowing her home address, it's also making her quite an easy target, her and her parents. And
yeah, I mean, someone went to her house.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I myself am also on this site, and there are a lot of my colleagues on this site. I'm absolutely sure that then you are also there. You can get assured for this. But when it comes to children, I think this is really far beyond any red line, and any government should really react to this, saying, guys, this is too much, and you need to stop this kind of activity. We will understand your feelings, but this is criminal. But we don't hear this kind of things from Western countries. We hear some kind of understanding from developing countries, but for them this is something that is quite far away. They are not very much emotionally involved into this, but they are sympathetic with what we are doing in regards of this Miratoris website, which I think is really a shame. And people will always regard this as a shame, the existence of this site and the way they treat minors, especially.
Well, I will continue to raise awareness about it here. And I'm also trying to work with Mira and Faina to raise awareness internationally about this, because it is a form of a war crime to what they're doing. And it's another example of the regime in Kiev just not respecting human life in any way, shape, or form. So Dan, what are your thoughts on that? And also I wanted you to weigh in on, going back to the weapons, on the fact that the DoD kind of threw out a thing that they were going to follow some of the big weapons, but they're not following the smaller ones, which are the problems. So could you weigh in on both those subjects?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the second question first. I mean, first of all, that's what the Department of Defense is saying, that they're going to follow some, as you say, the bigger weapons, not the small weapons. And again, small weapons can do a lot of damage, obviously.
It can kill thousands to hundreds of people. They're talking about the huge, missiles and whatnot, but they're not addressing the smaller, I shouldn't even say smaller. The other weapons are not mass destruction.
But But I also have huge doubt about their sincerity in tracking the bigger weapons. Again, to repeat, as of November, they said they had only tracked 10% of the weapons they sent. I mean, a minuscule amount. Moreover, as we know, on December 7th, so last week, a congressional proposal to audit what the U.S. has already sent to Ukraine was rejected. So the U.S. won't even subject itself to an audit of itself for the billions of dollars of equipment it is sending into Ukraine. I mean, the only thing one could conclude is that they have no intention of truly tracking any of this. And again, we've seen this before. We saw it in Libya, where weapons and the jihadists we supported there ended up in far-flung places like Syria, but also in the Sahel region there, destabilizing Mali and Chad and Tunisia. Do you remember the Fast and Furious campaign in Mexico, where weapons that Obama sent there ended up in the hands of drug cartels?
Cartels, yeah.
And this has happened in Colombia. This happens over and over. And so this isn't a surprise. And yet, again, when there's a simple proposal that these things be audited, it's rejected. So I have no optimism that the U.S. intends to do anything to make sure these weapons don't end up in the wrong hands. And that's why, we went to the UN Security Council and said, you, Security Council, have to do it, because the U.S. is not going to do it.
Well, is there any hope with the Republican Congress coming in January? Because the Republicans were the ones raising the alarm that there should be an audit, there should be some oversight, there should be something. And especially after CBS News got censored and they had to pull back some of their data when they did their documentary, and they were forced, because the Biden administration got, in a twist, because it was getting out that it's disorganized, that they don't have an idea where these weapons are going. And so do you think the Republicans pushing that is going to have any effect, or is it just sort of virtue signaling, if you will?
We'll see. I mean, I would like, let's put it this way. I'd like to see it happen. I think Americans should push for that. It's our money. It's billions of dollars that are not going to the homeless here, to people who are hungry, to infrastructure, right? So we should care where it's going and whether it's going to the so-called right hands. But again, as we pointed out to the Security Council, even when it gets to the right hands in Ukraine, that does mean going to parties that are shelling the Donbass as we speak, right? When I was in Donetsk, a school had been shelled, a place where people went to get fresh water was shelled, and they need to go there to get fresh water because they've been cut off from their water
and this
supply.
Was done by the Ukrainian.
Right. And we knew because I was in the presence of a international humanitarian law lawyer from Ukraine, was with us. And at the school, he picked up some of the ordnance and said, this is American made. So we know that even when it gets into the right hands, our hard-earned tax dollars are going to hit schools and other civilian infrastructure in places like Donetsk. By the way, there was also, this relates to the other subject we were talking about, the thing we did when we went to Donetsk, we actually brought, we were partially a humanitarian aid mission to bring clothing to monks at a monastery that's being shelled almost daily by Ukraine. So not only are they outlawing the Orthodox Church and invading churches, they're actually shelling this one particular monastery to the point where the monks now live underground. And these are men and women, and another of those monks have been killed. So again, that's your tax dollars at work, and people need to realize that.